Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video we're going to be creating 4 A6 cards using the Sweet Love paper collection. We've got the A5 paper pad, we've got both sets of sentiment strips, and we also have our ephemera pack. There is a link in the description box down below for my website where you can purchase this paper collection. So because the paper pad is A5, you're able to get 2 A6 panels from each of these. So that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. Is I'm going to pick out 2 sets of papers and we're going to create 2 cards with each one simply by cutting it in half. So for my particular A6 cards, so you can create 2 A6 cards from a sheet of A4 cardstock, but when I create mine I do trim them down slightly, so they are 4 inches by 5 3/4, just so the measurements are even and equal, and it just makes things a little bit easier. So I trim off a very small amount for my panels here, but again, depending on how you create or how you buy your A6 card bases, you will be able to just trim this in half. So for my first 2 cards, I picked out the Waves paper, and this is the landscape version of this. So with this particular paper, you're getting a portrait and landscape version, and it will just depend on what kind of card you're creating. So I'm creating a portrait A6 cards for both of my first 2 cards, and you can see I've trimmed this down and I'm just gluing this onto the card base. So for these cards, I wanted to show you how you can just use the kit. For the second 2 cards, I'm going to bring in a couple of other items, but mainly we're obviously just using the card kit here, or the paper collection. So I'm going through my ephemera and I'm picking out a bunch of flowers for my first card here. So in here you are getting 2 different sizes of the flowers, you're getting 2 different sizes of the leaves as well, and then you get a variation on the colors. And for our second one, again, I'm just sort of going through working out what I want to add, and it's pretty much going to be hearts, and you can see the speech bubble with the heart on there as well. So for these ones, we're keeping it kind of simple, but again, I just wanted to show you that you can create really simple cards with this paper collection. It's very easy to do because everything coordinates so well together. All of the colors are exactly the same, and then having the sentiment strips as well means that you can easily put sentiments onto your cards. For I believe it's 3 out of the 4 cards, I'm going to be using the black sentiment strips. For this first one, I picked out A Lifetime Is Not Long Enough. So with these, I've left the length how they were printed. I've not trimmed these down, because then it gives you the option, and you'll see in videos to come how I then sort of change the length and how it just kind of works a little bit better, and it gives you a little bit more choice. So with this particular sentiment, luckily this fits basically right across the front of that panel, so it's going to go edge to edge, which I think is really nice, and then it allows me to build up those flowers and leaves kind of behind it. I did pop some foam onto the back of the sentiment. That's going to be a little bit of dimension on this card, but I did also shape the ephemera a little bit as well, those flowers, just to give it a little bit of extra shape. So this is printed onto 230 GSM cardstock, so it is slightly thicker, but you can just add a little bit of dimension there just by kind of rubbing it with your fingers, and just soften it a little bit, and it just adds a little bit more interest and adds a little bit more again dimension onto your card or project. So you can see I'm sort of positioning my sentiment on here just to make sure that I'm sort of getting my flowers and leaves kind of where I want them to be. And then I can just take the backing off my sentiment and pop that onto the card. So a really simple card. And with all of these, I want to show you just something extra that you can add to do, something that you can change the look of some of these pieces to kind of fit what you want to do. So to finish these off, we've got 2 sets of Nuvo drops, but for this card, we're using Bubblegum Blush, and this is the Nuvo Crystal Drops, just a handful of different sizes all around those flowers. And that is our first card, which I absolutely love how this came together. I really love that really solid background. So then on to our second card using this panel. So on here, I end up picking out 3 different sentiment strips. So that's the other thing. You can add more than one sentiment to this. You can kind of build up different, phrases or sentences, really. So you can just go through the pack and see what works really well together. So to change up this one, what I'm going to do is just using a black fine liner, I'm literally just drawing an outline on this panel. So I've done 2 lines on all of the sides. And again, just another way to change this up a little bit. You don't have to leave the patterned papers exactly as they are. Again, you have a lot of scope here to be able to change it and work it to your style. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat recording today's video. So the 3 sentiments I picked out is I love you, always, and happy Valentine's Day. And with all of these, I've trimmed these down right to the edge of the wording. So again, you can either leave it long. In some of the examples, we're going to be cutting them at an angle, or you can trim them all the way down like this. So you have again that little bit of option there of how you want to use your sentiment strips. But you can see I brought in 2 extra love hearts here. We've got 2 of the smaller sizes. So all of the love hearts of the different colors are all different. So I have drawn each of them. So not all of them are going to be exactly the same, which I really like. It just adds a little bit of variation to this. So I glued the big heart onto the patterned paper, and then I added a foam square onto the back of the 2 smaller hearts, and then we've got a foam pad on the speech bubble as well. And then I picked out a thicker set of foam pads. These are by Chloe's Creative Cards, and I'm going to use this for the sentiments again, just to add more depth and dimension to this card, and just to create a little bit more interest. And we're kind of scattering this down the card. And what I really love is this ephemera works for these A6 cards. Not only that, they do work for other size cards as well, which you will see in up and coming videos, and it just works so nicely. So that is our second card finished. Again, very easy. We're going to add some of those bubblegum Nuvo drops on there as well. And again, 2 very quick and simple cards. They didn't take very long, but using not a lot of the ephemera, literally 4 of the sentiments and 1 piece of patterned paper. So for my second one, I took the Rainbows landscape patterned paper. You can see here, doing the exact same thing again, where I am just trimming this down to fit onto my A6 card base that I create myself. And for this one, we're going to bring in some inks, some distress inks. So with this, again, I just want to show you how you can take it a step further, how you can adjust this and have something that works more for your style. So I'm going to show you how you can change some of these bits and pieces, and again, add the ink to just change it a little bit from how it is. So I have got a whole video coming up where I did purchase some distress inks. You can see here that I have most of them now. I think I'm missing 1 pack here. So we're going to pick out a pink, and I went for worn lipstick. I think this worked really nicely with the color selection. For the next card, we're going to bring out another color of distress ink, so we can talk about that one in the next video. But for this one, what I'm going to do is use the worn start that again. We're going to bring in the worn lipstick, and we're just going to go right around the edge of this cardstock. So with this paper, it is a smooth cardstock that it's printed onto. It's 180 GSM, but you can ink. It's not coated. You can ink onto this, and you can see that I'm just working all the way around the edge. So just doing it nice and gentle with a blending brush, knocking off some of the excess to begin with. I do have in that top right corner, I had a little bit more than I would have liked, but I think by adding the ink around the edge, it really does help to lift it off of that white card base without having to add any additional cardstock, meaning you're not adding any additional weight. So with this card, we are going to add, again, some ephemera, but we're going to use the ephemera words. I'm not going to end up using this strip here. That's actually going to end up on the next card, which is just a scrap from our first 2 cards. So I went with hugs and kisses here, so 3 separate words, but they really got lost on the page. You can hardly see the kisses there because it's grey. You can hardly see it. So I decided to change this up a little bit, and I actually took a black fine liner and just went around the outside of all 3 of these. Now, I probably could have done a little bit of a better job, to be honest, of going around it. This isn't something that I would normally do, to be honest. But I actually really loved how this came out. It did help to make it stand out. We are going to add something else behind this to really help this stand out a lot more. But again, it's just showing you different ways that you can change up your ephemera. You can, change up your patterned paper to give you a slightly different look, and again, work for you. The idea is you have a base of products here, and you can look at how you change it. If you don't want, these with a white background, use some ink and, just change it up a little bit. So that's what I really love about this. So now by putting that on the patterned paper, you can see that it is standing out now by adding this black outline. You could matte and layer this onto maybe a black piece of cardstock and then just trim around it. But again, this isn't something that I normally do, and I wanted to have a go at doing it and really see how it looked and how well it stood out. And yeah, I think it did make the world of difference. So I'm going to put that on, and certainly then with this Kisses, you can see that a little bit better. But again, I felt like maybe it was still getting a bit lost. So I'm going to add a piece of vellum on here. Now, vellum is a really great way of being able to separate your layers without losing what's underneath it. So if I put a piece of cardstock on here, you would see the rainbows around the edge, but you'd see it with that pink ink that we blended on there. But through the vellum, you'll still be able to see the rainbows with that white. So I really like that. I think vellum is a really great tool. I think it is quite inexpensive to purchase. I've just ended up with quite a lot of it, to be honest. I've never really had to buy it, but it is just one of those things that I don't reach for all the time. But again, when I want something to separate two layers, but I don't want to hide anything behind it, this is a really great way. So I did try just distressing the edges a little bit with this distress tool. It didn't really work kind of too well, to be honest. You don't really see any difference, but I'm still happy with how it looked. So to assemble the card, I'm just going to glue my panel onto my card base here. So again, all of these are flat down. And then with the vellum, you need to be careful because the glue will show through. If you was just to glue this straight down, you'll see the glue through this vellum, of course, because it is see-through. So what I like to do first of all is add on my items on top of the vellum first of all, and then I place the glue behind those pieces. So I glued the and flat to the vellum. With both of the Hugs and Kisses words, I'm adding foam onto the back of these, and this is then again just going to give me that little bit of dimension, but again it's going to give me areas where I can add my glue. So I'm going to put Hugs at the top of this. So I leave it as this in terms of the sentiment, but again, you could then add any of the sentiment strips onto this as well, excuse me, to, add a bit more to the sentiment. I decided to add a couple of hearts and a flower to this as well. Again, just giving a few more areas where I can add glue, but also then just adding a little bit more interest onto this. So glued the heart just under the Hugs, and then I added a flower just behind the Kisses. And in a moment when I have glued this down, because the top right corner was coming up more than I wanted it to, that's when I add in then a second heart, so I can put again some glue behind it. So you can see I'm carefully then just adding the glue behind those areas where it's not going to show through. So just be careful not to add too much where it will kind of square out from behind those items. So you can see, there you go. So I'm just sort of bringing up that corner a little bit. So yeah, that's when I bring in that love heart then, just to hide, that little bit of glue to add it into the corner. And that is this card finished. So I don't end up adding any Nuvo drops onto this. I don't think it necessarily needs it. But again, showing you that you can ink up the edges of your patterned paper. Again, bring in inks and things just to change it up and make it a little bit different. So for my last card, again, we're using the other panel from this Rainbows Landscape page. I'm going to bring in this scrap here from the Waves paper. So again, making sure that we're using up our scraps and things. So I'm going to glue this piece down. I'm going to I have already trimmed down this panel this strip. And then I'm just cutting the edge on an angle, again, just to add a little bit of interest on here. And we're going to be using the cupcake from the ephemera pack. And then I'm bringing in two sentiments. So we've got Sweet Love, which works really nicely with our cupcake. And then we're going to bring in Happy Valentine's Day. So I'm just using my swatch sheet here for the distressings to see what colour, what shade of blue I wanted to bring in. And I do end up changing then the pink just to, again, bring in a slightly different colour. And I brought in a newer one that I hadn't used. And that is the saltwater taffy. I was going to go with the grey, but I decided to, bring in a different shade of pink. So again, I think both of these worked really well with this kit. So if you have distressings, you want to bring in some inks, I do recommend these ones. So again, this was I'm not sure if I said the blue. I think it was a Broken China that I used. Again, the saltwater taffy, and then we used walnut lipstick as well. And then I'm inking over the white sentiment strips. So again, with your sentiment strips, these are printed onto that same 180 GSM smooth cardstock. So you can ink on top of these. I think it worked really nicely. I did say in the release video, I have done a small amount of testing with alcohol markers to see if you can colour these in with markers, and I didn't get too much smudging, but I'm not sort of putting it out there that it can be done. I would definitely test it for yourself. Definitely don't use too much ink. Don't go over it too much, because you might find then that it does start to smudge. But certainly with the ink, inking up these, I certainly had no problems with that. So I'm just using the saltwater taffy, which is a newer colour, and I think that worked and blended really nicely. And you can see there, I'm just trimming the edge of that at an angle as well, just to, again, add a little bit of interest. And we're going to sort of bundle this closer to the bottom. The Happy Valentine's Day is going to be half over the strip, half onto the background. But then both pieces are going to end underneath that cupcake. So it just gives a really nice finish to that kind of area of the card. So I'm just moving it out a little bit, making sure I've got enough space there for you to be able to read the full sentiment and then still be able to fit that cupcake in. I really love the cupcake. It's probably one of my favourite images from this set. I just think it looks so cute. You've got all of that icing on top, which just looks really delicious. I love how this one came out. And again, you have just a handful of sentiments in here which do work nicely with that. I'm adding two foam squares or circles onto the back of this, and it's going to be finished. We're just going to add some Nuvo drops. For this one, I decided to go with Rhubarb Crumble, which is a metallic finish crystal drop, and it's just to add in, a slightly darker colour, since we used that lighter shade for the sentiment. And then that is going to finish these 4 cards. So I'm going to bring them all back in so you can see them. So again, this is the Sweet Love release. It is available on my website and on my Etsy shop, which you'll find links in the description box down below for. This is a starter sort of set of cards to show you how you can use it without kind of changing things too much, but adding small amount of extra details in here. I do really hope that you love the collection, and I hope you love these cards. I do have more card examples coming of how to use this kit, and also creating a sort of mini album with this as well, which I'm really excited to show you guys. So that is going to be it for this video. If you do like the collection, please leave me a comment down below to let me know. I'd absolutely love some feedback from it. Please help to support my channel by liking this video, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and help me reach my goal this year. Reaching 5,000 subscribers here on YouTube would be absolutely brilliant. So that's going to be it for today. Thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting.